I want to welcome you to this episode of the Retro Rogues Live. My name is Dave Beatty. I'm one of your hosts. Do not adjust your monitor. Yes, you can actually see me for the first time ever. For some reason, my avatar isn't working, so you have to bear with actually looking at my face on this particular episode. Anyhow, I want to welcome you to this particular episode. We've got our warning graphic up here. I want to make sure everyone understands warning. The Retro Rogues Live show is intended for an adult audience and not intended for children under the age of 13. For parental discretion is advised. We may curse even to reinforce this very basic concept that this is not a show for children. Anyhow, moving on, I want to welcome back my fellow host. This is Mr. Eric Alexander. Eric, please tell the folks watching, hopefully at home, all comfortable, maybe even with an adult beverage, the fun things you've done as a creative professional.
Yes, everyone. I am Eric Alexander. I'm also go by BaseGod14. That's BaseGod14. And I am the co-host of the Retro Rogues Live. I'm also the Chief Financial Officer of Bad Bob Productions, which is a small production company in Arizona. And I am the associate producer of the feature film Occupants, which stars Star Trek Voyager actor Robert Picardo and is currently streaming on Tubi. And we have a special guest host today. And this is Heather Ferris. Heather, can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on your show. Really do appreciate it. My name is Heather Ferris, and I do a Star Trek podcast called Star Trek Underground, or Starfleet Underground. First, I have to get my own name of my podcast right. Starfleet Underground. You can find it at starfleetunderground.com. And of course, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And then for my day job, I do Vegas Aces, which is content creation on YouTube and a website. And I basically teach people casino table games, and I help people learn how to deal so that way they could get a job for free without having to pay to go to school.
Very awesome. Very, very awesome. That's an awesome thing that you do there.
Very cool. I want to welcome you aboard, Heather.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. So the reminder for those who may be watching, and those who may be watching for the first time, we always start off with pop culture news. So anyhow, we want to start here with pop culture news. I've got a few items. Eric, I know you've got a few items, and I think Heather might have an item. Who should go first?
Well, I say ladies first. Heather, you sent me an article, so why don't I go ahead and share it?
Okay, sounds good. So this article, really excited. Patrick Stewart was on The View, and he formally asked Whoopi to join them for season 2. So watch the video. It's really awesome to see her reaction. And I am so freaking excited about this. This is going to be great. I can't wait to see what they do with her character.
Yeah, I was really excited when you shared this with me. Because I hadn't heard the news until you sent me the link. And yeah, they have the clip from The View. And it's pretty neat because Whoopi Goldberg gets kind of emotional, because you can tell she's really stoked about the idea of being on season 2 of Picard. Did you hear about this, Dave?
No, I did not. This is the first I'm hearing about it. So it's very cool.
Yeah, so she has apparently committed to season 2 of Picard. She will be back as Guinin. And then a really interesting thing, I don't know if you caught this, Heather, because you watched the clip, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting was Whoopi Goldberg made the claim that her character was the last character created by Gene Roddenberry. Had you ever heard that before?
No, I didn't hear that before. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's right at the end of the clip. And it totally stuck out to me because, she seemed very proud of that, and she was saying, yeah, as far as I know, I was the last character that Gene Roddenberry created. Had you ever heard that, Dave?
No, I hadn't heard that either.
So she made that claim. That's pretty neat. I don't know if it's 100% true, but she made that claim that she was the last character that Gene Roddenberry himself actually created.
Which means she definitely needs to be on Picard.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that's kind of neat, and you may have picked up on this at Star Trek Vegas, I've noticed that a lot of the next gen cast, they're very proud of the fact that they were like Gene's last babies, because they'll talk about that a lot when at different panels. I've heard each one of them mention that. They talk about meeting Gene and the fact that Gene actually cast them and all that kind of stuff. and they just seem very proud of that. And I think obviously Whoopi Goldberg is as well, which is, I think, very cool.
Very cool.
Cool.
So, Eric, do you want to go next, or should I go next, or?
Why don't you go next, Dave? What have you got?
Okay. All right. So if you'll share my screen, should we go with like something fun or something that's a bit of a downer?
Let's get the downer out of the way, and then we can go back up.
All right. So if you'll share my screen, I was very saddened to read that apparently Bad Robot will be developing film and TV projects based on the Warner Brothers and DC Comics series Justice League Dark. You know, overall, there's been several things that J.J. Abrams has done that I've enjoyed. But I just feel like that with the positive direction that we've been moving actually with DC films lately, I'm not sold that this is a particularly good idea. Justice League Dark, for those people who are not terribly familiar with the comic series, is actually sort of the more occult type characters from the DC universe. Characters like Swamp Thing, John Constantine, Zatanna, the magic users, basically, right? And you know, the animated film they did a while ago, Batman was actually a part of it. But they are kind of an officially sanctioned group of the Justice League. I don't understand how Justice League Dark is supposed to. Is it going to tie into the DCU? Is it not? I don't know. But I read this.
It might be like Joker, right? It might be like Joker, where it's like just a standalone thing.
It could be, but the problem is we've got a new Batman film on the horizon coming out by Matt Reeves, and I can't imagine they're going to take Batman and fold him into this. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this. So to me, this is a bit of a downer news item. Eric, had you heard this?
No, I hadn't heard this. I know that J.J. Abrams made a deal with Warner Brothers, and he was supposed to be developing, content for the, what is it they call it, the DCEU, right? Is that the term?
Yeah.
So I was aware of that, but I hadn't heard anything specific, like anything that had been actually greenlit or anything like that.
Yeah. Heather, had you heard this news?
No, I haven't heard anything about it.
Are you a J.J. Abrams fan?
No.
Okay. Then we're all kind of, well.
That was a very abrupt no, by the way. That was.
Yeah, no. No.
All right. Well, there you go. I hope for the best. Last several projects he's done, I've been kind of lukewarm or not enjoyed too much. I should be excited for this, but to simply, I'm not. Hopefully the trailer will come out and he'll prove me wrong, but I guess I should be happy it's Justice League Dark, at least if it's dark and whatever, and maybe kind of a downer. There you go. At least he's closer to something I think he might enjoy. So I don't know. Anyhow,
if it is a one-off kind of like Joker, I think that would be a little bit better in my mind. Because I'm much more concerned about when he gets into the more mainstream characters and things like that, and what's he going to do. But then again, I've questioned a lot of the decisions that Warner Brothers has made in regards to a lot of their films. I'm not a big Man of Steel fan. I'm definitely not a Batman versus Superman fan. But I actually like Justice League, which I think I'm like in the minority, because I know everybody wants the Snyder cut, but I actually like Justice League. So yeah.
So anyhow, so that's kind of my downer news item. So we should probably get moving along, because we've got a lot of ground to cover with Picard in this episode. So Eric, do you want to do your news item?
Yes. So I'm not sure if either one of you saw this. Heather, we do a lot of like trailer reactions and things like that when new trailers will come out.
Uh-huh.
And I saw that, and it was trending on Twitter. And that's the reason I saw it, was that the Clone Wars trailer came out. And I wasn't like hugely aware of this. Like, honestly, I'm not a big Clone Wars fan. I liked the movie, which again, I'm probably in the minority, because I actually liked the Clone Wars movie, the one that was released theatrically. I actually enjoyed it, but I never really got into the series. I do know that because of what happened in The Mandalorian, which, Heather, have you seen The Mandalorian?
No, I haven't, but all I could say about Star Wars and The Mandalorian is Baby Yoda Baby Yoda do. That thing has been stuck in my head ever since I freaking thought of it like the first time. And I
Yeah.
have the whole song like planned it out, and I'll just sit there and sing it to myself. Baby
Well,
Yoda
Baby Yoda is the breakout star of The Mandalorian. There's no denying that. But the interesting thing is Dave and I, we do a lot of like streaming wars coverage and things like that. And we've talked about how it seems like with The Mandalorian being over, there's not a whole lot of new original content on Disney Plus. Like there's no big it thing. And I guess this is what's supposed to kind of hold things over until like the next season of Mandalorian and whatever other, there's a bunch of Marvel projects coming, like, Loki and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. There's a lot of Marvel projects, but they're not coming out for quite a while. So this is like their big thing right now. And I'll just kind of play the trailer in the background here so you guys can kind of see. I kind of talked to somebody on Twitter about this because I tagged him, and he's a hardcore Star Wars fan. He's like a hardcore, very positive Star Wars fan. And he said one thing with him is he just doesn't like this style of animation. And for me, I'm kind of like on the fence about it. Like Dave, you're a professional artist. What do you think of this particular art style in general?
I don't really have a lot of issues as far as stylistically with the choices they've made with Clone Wars. I'm one of those people who actually quite enjoys Clone Wars. I haven't seen every single one. I've kind of cherry picked the ones that I've watched, and I'm curious to see this one since, I'm of the belief this is going to tie into what we're seeing with Mandalorian to some extent. And this trailer looks kind of interesting. So I'm down. I don't have a lot of issues stylistically with the choices they've made. I mean, it kind of fits in somewhat with Rebels, stylistically. So they kind of go together. So I don't have any issues with the stylistic choices that they've made as far as the approach that they've taken with it. I think that there's been a lot of really great episodes on Clone Wars. So, I've overall found it to be worthwhile. So
I think one of the problems with Clone Wars, though, is that as far as the main characters go, and you can see the ones that they're featuring very prominently in the trailer, like Ahsoka and Darth Maul, we kind of already know their fates. You know what I mean? Because we know that Darth Maul, appears later in Rebels. We know Ahsoka appears later in Rebels. So one of the things that I kind of question, because I know there's a lot of people that are actually like really excited about this, but one of the things I kind of question is, kind of where's the danger? You know what I mean? When these characters are going to basically be okay because they have to be in Rebels, which takes place after Clone Wars. Where's the drama?
Yeah, I could see that, but I think, it's weird. I'm an Ahsoka Tano fan. I quite like Ahsoka. So I'm just excited to see more adventures with Ahsoka.
Gotcha.
So for me, that's about the extent of it. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm like I said, overall, I've enjoyed Clone Wars. So I'm down to check it out. So
Heather, have you even watched Clone Wars?
No, I haven't. So that's I'm not much of a Star Wars fan, like Star Trek, don't like Star Wars. So the Clone Wars, is that an animation or a cartoon or something?
Yeah, it's animated.
Okay. Because it looks like a video game.
Yeah, it does. That's kind of what it reminds me of too. Like I said, I actually was talking to a real hardcore Star Trek fan on Twitter about this, and he was just saying that the animation style has always kind of rubbed him wrong.
Was he not a gamer?
I don't think he is.
Okay, that's the problem right there.
So
that's the problem right there.
But yeah, it does remind me of that kind of style, of that sort of video game style animation.
Yeah, because I think anyone who's a big video game person would have absolutely no problem with that animation. Because if you spend 100 hours on a game that looks even worse than that, and you're still invested in it, that's going to be great. Like that animation's fine. It's wonderful. Let's get to it.
That's true. I can see that. I definitely see that.
I have one more news item that's a fun thing. Eric, do you have anything else for?
No, that was my news. That was the Clone Wars trailer release.
Well, if you'll share my screen again, I'll do my my second fun one. So
that's funny.
As everyone knows, I've been trying to avoid the whole Funko Pop thing, and then I had collected several of the Batman ones. I talked about that on the previous episode, and I got a little Wolverine and a Namor. And I'd been debating because they have a line of X-Men Funko Pops where they're in their 60s blue and gold uniforms, and I'd been questioning, should I get this? Should I not get this? And then Funko made the decision for me because they announced actually at Toy Fair in London that they're going to be doing a series of Batman villains. And there's a story here. This is actually coming from Batman News or batmannews.com is where you can check out this story. But I was surprised to see some of the ones that they're doing. So they're going to be doing 89 Joker. They're going to be doing a Returns Catwoman and Penguin. They're going to be doing Forever Riddler and Two-Face. And from Batman and Robin, they're doing Mr. Freeze. And they're also doing Poison Ivy. So I was like, okay, well, I'll collect these, and that'll keep me away from getting too addicted to the Marvel ones. So in a weird way, this is good news for me.
Very cool.
I'll do the Batman movie villains. I've already got the heroes that I want, and then I can say, okay, I'm done. So this is my fun news item for pop culture news. So I thought it was kind of cool that they're doing this. And if you look on the actual news article, they do have images. Some of them look like prototypes, and then and I'm trying to actually do that on the wrong screen. Some of them look like prototypes, and then some of them are like concept art. It's like this is like a concept art piece.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah,
cool.
So it's kind of fun. If you're a fan, I definitely recommend going kind of checking out. If you're a Batman movie fan, these look like they might be fun, kind of have in your collection. So that's my pop culture fun news item. And with that, I'm done with pop culture news.
I will say that I am not a big Funko collector. I do have a couple, but I am not a big Funko collector. I've tried to resist that urge. So because it can be like all encompassing because there's so many Funkos out there. Heather, have you got into that at all?
Well, a good friend of mine actually gave me her entire Funko collection of the Ninja Turtles, including the Ninja Turtle van. So I have all of that.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. But yeah, so other than that, not really. I have one or two around here, but no, they're more like gifts.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, that's my last one for pop culture news. So if that's good, are we probably ready to get on to streaming wars?
Yeah, I've got a couple articles for you guys for streaming wars. Let me queue them up. Let's see here.
So you want me to set it up?
This particular article, you kind of have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt because this is CNBC, and we have to remember that NBC is going to be a big player in the streaming wars. Peacock is coming out in a couple months. I think they're doing their quote unquote soft launch in April, which is basically just for Comcast subscribers, and then it'll be available, I think, to the general public in July, I want to say. So anything that comes out of NBC at this point, you always have to take with a grain of salt because they are going to be a competitor in the streaming wars. They're going to be a big competitor in the streaming wars. So this article from CNBC says Netflix is feeling the pressure of the streaming wars. So here are the key points. Netflix Q4 2019 showed slowing domestic subscriber growth and weak guidance for the current quarter. In other words, they're not growing at the rate they were before. The pressure of new competition in streaming is weighing on Netflix, and the company responded with a mix of fuzzy metrics and optimism that it can stick with its strategy of investing heavily in content to grow its subscriber base. Netflix investors weren't convinced on Wednesday, and the stock was down about 2%. So there is some, I guess, a little bit of troubling news for Netflix. Now, Heather, we always cover the streaming wars on our program. I'm not sure how into it you are, but we've kind of done some reporting in the past about how Netflix is getting into a really bad debt situation because they are because they're both acquiring and they're creating so much content, which they have to pay for that. They have to pay the licensing, they have to pay for production costs, and they're going into debt. But at the same time, Netflix is by far the biggest player in the streaming wars right now. They have more subscriptions by far than any other streaming service. So they have a huge advantage in that regard. So anyway, basically this article is just kind of showing a little bit of a warning sign for Netflix that it may have some problems down the road, and that their growth appears to be slowing down. Now, is that a result of the streaming wars, or is it something else? I don't know. I mean, there are some issues, like for instance, a lot of these some popular shows like Friends are going to be taken off or have been taken off of Netflix because all these content providers are coming out and they're trying to get their IP back. They're trying to get their shows back. So, we'll kind of see. Like I said, you kind of have to take these kind of things with a grain of salt because of who the source is. And NBC is obviously biased because, they're going to try to promote their thing, which is Peacock. But still, it is something that's a little bit troubling for Netflix.
I don't know what they're going to do, but I remember hearing that Friends, even though it's 20 years old, they had the most views or the most people watching last year. I mean, it was like crazy. So if they're going to take that down, then I don't know. I think the business people up there, they might have a strategy for this. They might know what they're doing. And when you own a business, debt is not necessarily a bad thing. Investors, well, that's something different, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, you have to kind of consider the source because, anything that comes out of NBC at this point regarding this topic is going to be biased. That they're going to try to paint themselves in a better light. But yeah, the thing for Netflix that's bad for them is that growth slowing, because they've kind of been on this consistent track of growing at a pretty fast rate, and it appears that growth is slowing down. So I would say that probably the streaming wars is affecting that a little bit. That's where that slower growth is coming from.
Interesting. I don't have a lot of comments because we've kind of talked about a lot of this before, So, I mean, while you have to question the source, there's also probably a little germ of truth in there, little bit of truth. So, I mean, it makes sense. They're losing a ton of content. There's more competitors than they've ever had to face before. So, it's like I said before, to me, it's all about the quality of the content. They've got Sabrina season 3 is going to be hitting here in a day or two. I know a lot of people that are excited about that. I quite enjoyed the 2 seasons I saw of it. I'm not going to say Hail Satan, but anyhow. So they've got a lot of fun content. So we'll see. It's so weird looking at myself. It's so friggin' weird.
Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see what's up next for Netflix. So I still haven't watched any of Lost in Space season 2. I've just been too busy. Just too much going on.
Have you seen that, Heather? Lost in Space?
No.
Yeah, I haven't either. We covered a trailer for that in a previous episode. So that's something that Dave has recommended to me. I don't know, Dave, maybe on a future show we'll get back to that and actually review some episodes or something like that. But I actually haven't seen it either. So
season 1, it was really great. But just season 2, I haven't had a chance to get to it, even though the trailers look really interesting. So
now I did have one more article. I thought this was interesting. This is from Yahoo. And let's see, when was this article dated? January 21st. So just yesterday. It says, in streaming wars, live sports could set NBC's Peacock apart. And I thought this was kind of neat since it's from Yahoo. So it might be a little bit more independent, if you will. But basically what this article is talking about is that NBC has a lot of sports content. And they're saying that there's no coincidence that the Peacock is basically going to be coming out when the Tokyo Olympics start, because they're going to be able to show coverage of the Tokyo Olympics on the Peacock. One of the interesting things, though, about this is they do talk about who their competition is in terms of like live sporting events. They talk about ESPN Plus, and I've had a really bad experience with ESPN Plus. On a previous show, I was talking about how my experience with it has been really bad. I think ESPN Plus is pretty much a big ripoff, and it's extremely misleading. It's extremely misleading. The reason being that the ESPN app is for all of the ESPN channels. And so there isn't a dedicated app for ESPN Plus. So when you first open up the app, it looks like you have all this amazing content to choose from as far as sporting events, live events, because they're basically showing you everything that's on all their channels. And ESPN has something like 5 channels. But it turns out that the ESPN Plus stuff is like very limited. And you have to actually like tab over the ESPN Plus tab. And then it's like basically like a lot of soccer. I think there's a decent amount of hockey. So if you're like into soccer or hockey, it's good. But I'm not really into either one of those things. The biggest thing that I got it for was for college football. And it turned out there was like no college football on it at all. So they talk about ESPN Plus in this article as a competitor. But the funny thing is, and we're going to be talking about Star Trek Picard. That's going to be our main topic. In this article, they don't talk about CBS All Access at all. And CBS All Access does have live sporting events. They do have NFL games and things like that. In fact, I think that's one of the big drivers for their subscription. And they don't mention it at all. And I found that really peculiar. I thought that was really weird that they didn't even mention them as a factor. And I don't know why that is.
Yeah, I don't know, because I've watched quite a bit of sports actually on CBS All Access. That's one of the upsides, of it, besides being able to see all the Star Trek content that I enjoy. Because a lot of their scripted shows, I don't know, a lot of them don't appeal to me. I've tried quite a few of them, but they just, I don't know, they don't work for me, it seems like. And along these lines, this we're talking about, our winners and losers. And I had been talking about on Amazon Prime, I had been enjoying rewatching Justified. Well, just a couple days ago, Justified suddenly disappeared from, not disappeared, but the little banner at the top that tells you, you can watch it as an Amazon Prime member disappeared. And I'd been working my way through the entire series, and I was like, what the heck's going on? And they wanted me to pay to watch the episodes. Well, for those of you who have Hulu, who've heard me talk about Justified, and you haven't had a chance to watch it, you can watch Justified on Hulu. So it's weird how this content is just kind of like musical chairs, just going all over the place. And I heard because of contracts, stuff's going to be leaving Disney Plus and showing up on other services. And then also additionally too, even like Friends and some of these other shows that these streaming services are touting as an important like cornerstone of their service. A lot of this stuff is going to be music chairs going all over the place. So it's not going to be there the whole time. So it's really going to be on the streaming services to really make sure that their core content, that they're bringing people to their service with is really good. And it's going to stay on there, because if you log in to watch something you're enjoying and all of a sudden you can't watch it because it's somewhere else, that's going to really alienate people.
Yeah, that's going to be happening for a while. Like we were just talking about, like with Friends and things like that. There's going to be sort of like this musical chairs thing happening for quite a while as these new streaming services kind of establish themselves. That's going to happen a lot. And I think that is going to be frustrating for a lot of people.
Cool. I don't have anything for streaming wars for this particular segment. Man, it's so weird looking at myself on camera. At least this much, anyway. Because when we did the retrospective episodes, they were very short. We've already done 2 retrospective episodes. This is too much of me. Anyhow, if that's good for everyone, I guess we should start moving on to our main topics. Are we good there?
Heather, did you have anything else, or did you have any comments about the streaming wars or anything?
Nope.
Cool. All right. Well, then we can move on to the main topic.
Okay. So if you'll share my screen, we've got our bumper here. So this episode is obviously our Star Trek Picard Cram session. We're going to recommend to you, dear viewer or dear listener, whether you're watching or listening to us on Facebook or Twitch or Twitter or some service we're not even aware of that we're streaming on right now. We're going to be talking about the things that we think that you might want to watch as preparation for Star Trek Picard. Picard does start on CBS All Access actually tomorrow. So you've got an awful lot you're going to have to cram because we've selected, based off of the 3 most important characters we believe in the show, we've selected 3 things that we think that you should be aware of, hope you should watch or read or contemplate before Star Trek Picard starts. So who do we want to start with, Eric?
It's going to be ladies first, right, Heather?
All right.
Sure.
And your character is 7. So
Yeah,
Heather is going to be talking about her sort of like must-see stories for 7 of 9 that she thinks, you need to see, that you need to know about before you watch Picard.
Yes. So I have 2 episodes. They are Voyager season 5, episode 15, and part 1 and 2, Dark Frontier. And then the other one is season 6, episode 26, and season 7, episode 1, which is the Unimatrix Zero, part 1 and 2. So they were 2 parters, both of them.
Cool.
Sweet. So, they were really interesting. They are, the reason why they're good is because in the Dark Frontier, basically this episode, reveals how 7 of 9 was first assimilated into the Borg collective, and why. They talk about her parents, they talk about what happened, and it gives you a lot of insight into her history and her past, and oh my god, that girl went through some trauma and she's dealing with it. It also goes into the Borg drones and how they have a somewhat interesting, complex relationship with their collective and the Borg Queen. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Let's see. So I liked how they showed her parents. I really liked how they went into depth about why this child was in space and, was taken over to begin with. I love that. I also liked when 7 of 9 met the Borg Queen. I thought that was fantastic. And this gives you a history behind it all. She went through a lot of first in this one. For example, this was her first betrayal. She in this episode, she told Janeway that, there was this connection between them, and then she betrayed them and they came after her. So at the very end, when you see Janeway and her talking, it's they sort of became a family. I'm here for you. I'm going to take care of you. And by the way, go to bed like you're a child. I'm sorry. That was just bothering me. I had to get that out of there. So it was a pretty interesting 2-parter to watch. And then the second one was Unimatrix Zero. And with Unimatrix Zero, what happened was basically the Unimatrix is sort of a dream state that the Borg drones go to be themselves. They're actually, they look like themselves. They act like, humans. They don't act like drones. And this is what happens when they're dreaming. But it doesn't happen to all Borgs. It only happens to 1 in a million Borgs. And during this whole thing, the Borg Queen is trying to get rid of that malfunction. and she's trying to infiltrate them. And 7 of 9 was one of those people, or one of the Borgs that had that recessive mutation that allowed her to be in this dreamlike state or area. And she knew people there. She had relationships with people there. You find out more about her as a person because she spent 18 years growing up in this area with these people. So they're sort of like her friends and her family who know her very well as a person, not as a Borg. So I found that very interesting. And it's just another deep dive into 7 of 9 and who she is and where she came from and what she went through. And again, trauma. Like, you really see like the stuff that she goes through dealing with this trauma and trying to still be someone that she doesn't really know how to be. So it's very interesting to see her evolve. And I think the reason why these two episodes are important for Picard is because in Picard, 7 of 9, if you guys don't know, not sure if you know, but 7 of 9 had a problem coming back to Picard as 7 of 9 because, as she said at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas, I don't know if I could play that same character. I'm not that same person. I can't play 7 of 9 like she used to be. And she was having this really internal conflict about coming back as the character. And one of her friends told her, you know, it's 20 years later for 7 of 9 too. 7 of 9 is a whole totally different person, and you have to incorporate that into the character. And it doesn't have to be the same 7 of 9, because who on this earth is the same person that they were 20 years ago? So I find that whole character development very interesting, to see her going from a child, actually becoming Borg, getting out of the Borg, and then coming to where we see her on Picard and how she gets there. And also, I'm really interested with Picard, seeing, you know, what happened in those 20 years. What happened to her? How did she evolve? And who is she now as 7 of 9 compared to her as 7 of 9 20 years ago? So I'm really interested in seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think these are some really good choices because, you know, in Dark Frontier, you really get the background on 7 of 9, like you said. You get to find out about her parents, right? Which I always thought that was a little bit weird what her parents were doing. It seemed like it was pretty reckless for them to be chasing after the Borg with a little girl, you know?
Oh yeah, totally.
And I'm a parent myself, okay? So I'm like, that's pretty irresponsible. And I think there is a moment in that episode where 7 says that. She's like, my parents were kind of idiots, you know? When she's kind of like lamenting about the whole situation. Or that might have been a different one where she
she was angry.
Yeah.
She was angry. She was like, you know, they screwed up and they got me to where I'm at now, and I had to go through that because of them. And she was just like, screw them. So she was very she was angry about it. And another thing, that's, you know, you see all these conflicting emotions, and you see all these problems, and you see, you know, what she went through as a past as a Borg compared to what she's going through in the present as trying to be a human being. So it's very interesting to see that conflict.
Yeah, and then in the other episode that you're talking about, Unimatrix Zero, what's interesting there is, in a lot of ways, I'm kind of thinking that the 7 of today is actually very much like her in the dream state. You know what I mean? I think she's kind of changed more into that person, possibly.
You mean she's more human instead of Borg?
Right. Yeah,
Okay.
like I think she's going to be a little bit more like she is in that dream state. You know, like one of the big things that I was talking about actually at the convention with a lot of people, and Jerry Ryan did talk about this. She talked about the change in 7's speech and how at first, when she was kind of directed, "Hey, you don't talk like that anymore," that was hard for her, because she's like, "Well, then where's 7?" You know what I mean? She's kind of like, that's, for me, that's that way she talks, that's kind of 7. And I remember what she said was, in her own head, what she decided was, hey, maybe 7 talks this way. She talks more normal because she kind of has to like fit in, you know, like she's kind of forced to, because otherwise she makes people uncomfortable. You know, she said something along those lines.
Right. Like, what experiences did 7 of 9 go through on Earth along with other people that made her change into someone who's more human?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So yeah, I'm kind of wondering about that. And I think these are really interesting choices that you made.
And one of the things that we've noticed too, Heather, in our previous coverage, Eric and I have been going through the Countdown comic book that's leading up to Picard, and we also did the Road Less Traveled to Picard, where we kind of examined some other things. And based off of what we're seeing in the trailer and in the Countdown comic specifically, we think that, kind of racist ideas and prejudice ideas are going to play into the show. So again, as that survival instinct, Seven might be evolving and becoming more human just because she might be dealing with, prejudices and racism, because she is a Borg, and we're seeing that with the Romulans specifically in the trailer. It looks like there's secluded areas where certain people are not supposed to be. So that might be part of her survival instinct, because as a Borg, unless she's on specifically a Borg colony and even dealing with other people, they're going to have a lot of kind of not just fear, but also hatred for the Borg, because of all the things that the Borg have done.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think that's going to play into Picard for sure. I think that there's going to be some Borg backlash, if you will, where people are suspicious of other people that were Borg. And, it seems to me that the state of the Borg, obviously in the wake of the last episode of Voyager, they're pretty much like devastated. They're kind of like, refugees, and they're kind of just like, in a very kind of sad state, to the point that, the Romulans, it appears, are able to experiment on them and are exploiting them,
Yeah.
So yeah, I like your choices. Those are good choices. Definitely tells you a lot about Seven's background, and I think possibly what she might be like in the new show.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. This is going to be awesome.
Right on. Well, I was thinking I would go next, unless you had any more, Heather.
No. I just want to say, am I allowed to give minor spoilers?
Oh, we'd have to have that discussion,
right? Because you're thinking what I'm thinking.
Because I listened to your podcast, okay, and you guys did do some spoilers, okay.
Minor spoilers.
Dave, if you're not aware, one of her co-hosts, actually already saw the first 3 episodes of Picard.
Yep.
Oh.
So Heather has inside knowledge.
Yeah.
Okay. Heather has not like speculation or rumor. She has inside knowledge.
I made him tell me all the details. I'm like, you have to spill all the beans.
Heather, you were asking like everything. And it's really funny because they actually had Section 31 come in and edit their show.
Yeah.
Because she was giving away everything.
Yep.
So,
they censored us.
Yeah, Section 31 actually came in and censored them because they were giving away like everything. I'm surprised you didn't get sniped, Heather. I'm not surprised just to like, take you out.
He's in the corner.
But she was asking everything.
Now.
So Heather like knows everything basically that's in the first 3 episodes. So as we speculate, because Dave and I have some theories, okay? And also there were some minor spoilers that got out that Section 31 didn't cover. Right. So there were some that I'm aware of too now. And Dave, I don't think is.
And before we continue with that, I just want to say, am I allowed to give this minor spoiler real quick?
Well, let's see what you got.
Okay.
Be careful,
so spoiler warning, anyone watching the show right now.
It's very minor.
Spoiler warning, but minor. Heather says it's
very, very minor. Okay. So 7 of 9 does not appear in the first 3 episodes. Super minor. I told you it was a minor spoiler.
But that is relevant, and it is a little bit of a cause for concern, because one of the concerns that people have is, how are the legacy characters going to be treated? Are they going to be important to the story, or are they going to be glorified cameos? You know what I mean?
And also, Picard is only 10 episodes, so seeing 3 episodes, that's 30% of it. Yeah,
that's a little bit concerning, right? Because I personally want to see the legacy characters treated right, and I want them to be relevant to the story. And if they're cameos, which I don't think 7's going to be a cameo. I think Riker and Troy will be cameos.
Probably.
But I think 7 is relevant to the story.
Riker and Troy, I want to see their kids.
Yeah, I heard you say that. You want to see the kid.
I want to see the kids.
We do hear one of the kids. She's
Yes,
like,
we heard him.
hey, Picard's here, or whatever, right? She's in the trailer.
I want to see him.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. That'll definitely be interesting to see Riker and Troy as kids. But when it comes to spoilers, Heather, you know, I've always thought of myself as someone that is kind of into spoilers. You're really into spoilers. I mean, she was asking everything. She was like, what happens here? What happens there? What happens there? You know?
I wanted to know.
So we need to be careful. We need to be careful.
It was worse when we weren't recording too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, Section 31 came in and they were after you guys. So
yes, they didn't like me very much. I have one of them standing in the corner of my bedroom watching me while I sleep.
Yeah, I can see why now. I can definitely see why.
He made friends with the temporal police that's also watching me. They're both huddled in the corner.
But just be careful when we start, like, because I'm going to do some speculation as I get into my episodes. And if you know the answer, be careful what you say, okay, Heather?
Okay, I'll be careful.
Because I don't claim any inside knowledge. I got a little bit of spoilers from your podcast, but Section 31 did a pretty good job of keeping most of that under wraps.
Yeah.
But I do have some speculation that's actually based on a theory that Dave gave me. That's going to be one of the tie-ins for because I'm doing data, and I did technically 4 episodes. I cheated a little bit because one is a 2-parter.
But before you start, let's switch out the graphic and give it a little bit of air here.
All right.
Which one are you doing first?
I think I'll go in the order of how they aired. So the first one would be The Measure of a Man, which is really a classic episode. I don't think we're going to be doing too many spoilers. Let me take the spoiler banner off. So The Measure of a Man. This is a season 2 episode of Star Trek. It is often regarded by many people as like the first really good Next Generation episode, because a lot of people are kind of dismissive of the first season, although I actually like a lot of the first season of Next Gen. A lot of people don't. And a lot of people actually consider this like the first really great Next Generation episode. And I think it's going to be incredibly relevant for Picard. This is the episode basically where they establish the rights of Data, what his legal status is, because it's called into question. So if you don't remember this episode, basically what happens is a scientist from Starfleet comes in and he wants to experiment on Data because he wants to make more Datas. He wants to make more Sung-style androids. And it turns out that his methodology is flawed, and there's a good chance he might actually like destroy Data in the process of doing this, right? Mm-hmm. So Data says, I'm not going to do it. I refuse. He even resigns from Starfleet because they can order him to do it, but if he resigns, then they can't make him do it. Or can they? Because what they do is they argue, well, wait a second, Data is a machine. So he's property. He's the same status as the computer on the Enterprise. He's no different. And so what happens is they actually have a trial with the judge advocate of that sector, who has this very interesting history with Picard. I had forgotten because I hadn't watched this episode in a while, and I watched it obviously to prep for the show. And it's kind of funny because this judge advocate that they deal with has this history with Picard. She actually led the investigation on the Stargazer, the loss of the Stargazer. So she has this history with Picard, negative history with Picard. But what happens is they have to actually do a trial, and Riker is put in the position where he has to actually advocate that Data is in fact a machine. He's actually placed in that role where Picard is defending Data and trying to stick up for his rights. And it's a really good episode. Like I said, a lot of people consider this the first truly great Star Trek episode. I think it's going to be 100% relevant to Picard because
I actually know the answer to that question.
Well, this is a little bit of a spoiler, but it's from Children of Mars. So on Children of Mars, there's a reference to synth rogues. And so we can surmise from that there is sort of a new faction of rebel synths, basically Sung-style androids. So we can surmise that based on the Children of Mars short track. So I think what's going to happen is obviously there's some sort of feeling of oppression going on with these Sung-style androids. They're being exploited or oppressed. There's a scene in one of the trailers where you can clearly see that they're like there's a bunch of them like in a room, and they're kind of like, you know, who knows, being experimented on, or it's a production facility. We don't really know. But I think this is going to be very relevant in terms of, for some reason, and we're going to have to find out why, maybe those rights have gone away. Maybe these synths don't have the same status that Data did. We know from Brent Spiner's comments that the disassembled, Data-looking android is B4. What we don't know for sure is, you know, why B4 was disassembled and put in there. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this kind of plays into Picard. I do think it will be relevant because they might cite this later on and say something happened where there was a new precedent that was established or something like that. But it's definitely, I think, going to be important to this synth faction that we don't really know much about. These people that apparently destroyed Utopia Planitia on Mars in this attack that actually occurred, I guess, way before Picard even starts, back when Picard was still in Starfleet and actually preparing to do the evacuation of Romulus. So we have the measure of a man. And then let's see here. I have to look at the graphics we got.
I did want to mention there's a new teaser trailer that they put on CBS All Access. I don't know if you've seen the images from it, Eric, but it's the one that actually shows the Enterprise D, like blink and you'll miss it. But in that same trailer, that image we keep seeing over and over again of that black garbed character with the weird, you know, phaser laser looking weapon, right? Or
the one that's chasing after Dodge, right? Dodge is her name, the mysterious, yeah.
Well, in this new trailer, they show that image, and then another real flash, blink and you'll miss it, and it's an image of one of those what I thought were the Sung era androids, and he has a weapon, and he's raising it up to point it. So they're kind of like, you know, but I mean, blink and you'll miss it. But it's the same kind of one where they have like the numbers on the forehead. You know, kind of X 1138 kind of thing, you know, the barcode, you know. But it's a real brief thing, but it's very clearly in this most recent one that they actually put on CBS All Access.
That's interesting. Oh, we have a comment from the chat. Ballerina KC asks, "What if the synths are working for the Borg? They would be perfect in their eyes." That's an interesting theory. If the synths are in fact some way controlled by whatever's left of the Borg, that's the big question too, right? What is the state of the Borg, right? Are the Borg, like I said, are they just kind of like victims here now, or is there still like an active, you know, collective that's still out there assimilating people? You know what I mean? We don't really know, but that I kind of like. That's an interesting theory. You know, what if the synths are working for the Borg? You know, they would be perfect in their eyes. And by the way, I am going to get to another episode right now. Well, not right now. It's the last one I have. But I'm going to get to an episode that actually had that scenario somewhat. So that's a great comment. That's a great question about whether the synths are somehow in league with the Borg. So the other episode that I did was one of the two-parters. No, I'm sorry. I got the order confused. I want to go in the order that they aired. So I'm going with The Offspring. I can't remember what season Offspring was in. Offspring, if you guys don't remember, was the episode where Data has a child. This is where Data decides that he is going to continue his race, essentially build his race, and he decides to have a child. He creates Lal, this female Sung-style android. And he's able to do this by essentially copying his positronic brain, and he's able to sort of piece together this android that he regards as his child. And it's got a lot of similarities to A Measure of a Man. It's kind of interesting because it almost feels in this episode like Starfleet's already forgetting Measure of a Man, like they're forgetting the precedents already in this episode, because there's an admiral in Starfleet that basically wants to take Lal away from Data. And it's like, this is ridiculous. It's like, what are you even thinking? You know, it's like, and Picard gets to that point. There's a neat point in that episode where, you know, the admiral is like saying, you know what, I don't really care what any of you think, because Data says no, Lal says no. Picard is obviously like, no. And he's like, I don't care. I'm an admiral. I'm just going to take her. And Picard says, no, you're not. You know what I mean? He actually, and, you know, the admiral's like, no, Picard, this could destroy you, you know, because you're basically, you know, contradicting direct order. And Picard says, hey, you know, history is full of examples of people that, you know, blindly followed orders and did terrible things. And I'm not going to be one of those people. So it's a very powerful episode. I think it's definitely going to be relevant to Picard because obviously, again, we have this issue of what are the rights and status of these androids. Even with Measure of a Man, even in TNG, we have this episode where they're already forgetting that. They already don't care. They're already, you know, regarding them basically as second-class citizens, because they are willing to do this to Data to take his child away. And what does it do? It kills Lal, because she suddenly has emotions. She becomes, I'm sorry, it's Lal, right? Lal. She suddenly has emotions, and it overwhelms her because she doesn't have the chip, you know, like the chip that Sung made specifically for Data for emotions. It overwhelms her positronic brain, and she dies because of fear, essentially, because she's not built to accommodate that. And because she's so afraid of this admiral taking her away from her father. And this really gets me now, by the way, because I am a father, and it's like, it's pretty heart-wrenching, but I definitely think it's going to be relevant to Picard because we have, again, this issue of what is the rights, what is the status of these people, of the Sung-style androids. And we definitely think they're going to be in Picard. So I think that this episode is going to be extremely relevant.
Oh, and I was going to add, you know, this episode obviously plays into my theory that I know there's no way in the world that it's right. That the character Dodge or whatever that we see, I had this feeling that she could be, you know what I mean, maybe an android, and maybe she contains some of the memories, you know, of kind of Data's child. That crazy theory.
And by the way, Heather knows the answer to that.
And I'm sure there's no way that's true.
So,
let me
which would be a major spoiler. So don't go there, Heather. Don't go there.
Say this real quick. Since the last time I spoke, where I said I know all that, until now, Section 31 has come in and made me sign an NDA. So now I'm not allowed to talk about it. Okay, go ahead.
There we go. Right. There we go. Because Heather knows the answer to that, Dave. She knows whether your theory is correct or not. And of course, Dave, your theory is that basically Dodge is Data's daughter, essentially. That's your theory. Yeah.
Right. And the reason I had that is because, just so you know, Heather, the reason I had that is I think it was the second or the first full trailer. There's that scene where Data is painting and Picard's walking up to him, and Data turns to Picard, and it's a female figure. She's on the, like, it looks like an edge of a cliff, and there's this crazy storming, raging ocean, and he turns and he's handing Picard the brush, telling Picard, you have to finish this painting. And it's like he's passing the reality of taking what he started and having to try and find a way to finish it. And there's a couple of different ways to look at that. But my initial thought when I look at her character is I could see where, and you can even see in this image here that we've got, you know, that there's enough similarity there that in my head, I'm thinking it's like, you know, it would explain why Picard would be like, no, this is my responsibility and I have to take care of this. You know, that it's almost like protecting the legacy of Data. that same idea could extend beyond the fact that, whether she is or isn't Data's, child or daughter in a, metaphorical sense or whatever. But anyhow, that's what I thought. I just had this because it would explain why she would know to go to Picard, why she would trust him and know he would protect her. Anyhow, that's my crazy Picard theory that I know there's no way in the world is true.
That Section 31 agent is sitting there in the corner looking at me.
All right.
It's pretty scary, I have to say. Very intimidating.
Yeah, that they came right into their show at Starfleet Underground, and they because she asked that question, yeah. Dave. She asked directly, so Section 31 came in to their show and edited it, but she knows the answer.
Yeah, so they threatened me, and I basically, if I say anything, they'll rip out my tongue, and I like my tongue.
There you go.
I like tasting.
That is important. And then I have one more. This is the two-parter that I chose. This is a scene from Descent parts 1 and 2. I believe this is actually from the second part, this particular image that we're showing. But this one is relevant for so many reasons, really. And it kind of relates to the question that we were asked in the chat, which is, this was a scenario where there were Borgs and the Sung androids working together. And the basic premise of this episode is that after Hugh was released in the previous episode, I, Borg, after he was released and he came back to the Borg Collective as an individual, he basically wrecked everything. The individuality of Hugh corrupted the other Borg on his cube, and they basically got to the point where they couldn't function. And luckily, quote unquote, Lore came across this dead Borg cube and took it over. And Lore came up with this idea that basically he was going to help the Borg become 100% synthetic, basically become androids like him. And this actually appealed to these Borg that were stranded and severed from the collective and unable to function. And of course, they start to become very aggressive, very much like Lore. He actually gets them to become emotional and aggressive. And then he actually manipulates Data using the emotion chip that Dr. Sung had made for Data, but Lore stole in a previous episode. Lore had actually stolen the emotion chip that was created specifically for Data, and he was using it. And then he uses it to sort of, I guess manipulate is the correct word. He manipulates Data by basically providing him with emotions, which again, Data can't really process. So he's having like these very negative emotions. He basically kills a Borg and he likes it. He takes pleasure in it. For the first time in his life, he actually experiences emotion, and they're very negative. And this is all because of the manipulation that Lore is doing. So I think this is definitely going to be relevant. I don't know if this is necessarily like, I don't know if I'm going like full on like prediction, but I've talked with Dave about this. I kind of want to get your take on this too, Heather. I would love to see Brent Spiner come back as Lore. I think that would be really, really cool if Lore became the big baddie of Star Trek Picard, and that he was kind of going back to this plan of using the Borg. And, now you have these, you have multiple Sung-style androids, and he goes back to this plan, of sort of incorporating them together, Yeah. And whether he's in it or not, his legacy is there. You know what I mean? Because that was Lore's idea. And I think that's definitely going to be in Star Trek Picard. They're going to explore that idea a little bit more. There's definitely some experimentation going on involving the Sung-style androids and the Borg, which was Lore's idea.
I would love to see that, because the one thing that I really liked about Lore is seeing Brent Spiner's emotions come through. I thought that it really enhanced it. I love that. I would like to say one thing about this episode real quick is when he does kill that Borg and he experiences those emotions, he goes into the holodeck and he tries to recreate that in many different ways. He tries to recreate different emotions in many different ways. And one of the emotions that he tried to recreate was lust.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
he was in the holodeck with some chicks trying to get it on. And
yeah, that's true. Yeah, he says that in there. Yeah.
Right. And on our previous podcast, I was like, well, it's a good thing Geordi didn't like walk in during that time, because that would have been more awkward. And my co-host Rocky was like, oh, that's because there was a sock on the holodeck door. That's the reason why he didn't walk in. So we had to create an image of the sock on the holodeck door and Geordi looking at it like, huh? And not going in. And I love that. So I had to bring that up.
Well, he does end up coming in at an awkward time anyway, because basically
Data's
sitting there simulating killing the Borg over and over again. And that's when Geordi walks in.
Like seeing that or seeing him naked. I don't know. I think I would have preferred the latter. I mean, the part where he's strangling the guy, like, yeah, that would have been really bad.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I could definitely see that. There is a really dark moment also in this episode. Speaking of Geordi, there's a dark moment in this episode where they have captured a Borg, and he has an ability to give Data emotion, and he actually is able to get Data to basically admit that he would actually kill Geordi to get that high again. He would actually kill his best friend just to get that emotional high. You know what I mean? It's a really dark scene. It's really kind of messed up, and to see Data doing that. And also, you were mentioning about how cool it is to see Lore, because Brent Spiner got to show emotions. But what's really neat is he gets to show emotions as Data in this one. You know what I mean? And he gets to show that this is like the first time Data is having emotions, and he's having real problems. Like because obviously he's being manipulated. Lore is only giving him the bad stuff. He wants to make him aggressive. He wants to make him hateful. You know what I mean? He wants to make him resentful. So he's only giving him like negative stuff. But yeah, Data takes Data takes a very dark turn. He experiments on Geordi. He actually experiments on him when he kind of knows that Lore's experiments aren't working and are probably going to kill him. So he takes a very dark turn in this. But again, I think that this premise that Lore came up with is going to be one of the big things explored in Star Trek Picard, is going to be this premise of mixing the Sung-style androids with the Borg, and that's somebody else has taken up that mantle. But I would love, and again, I can't say it's a prediction because I don't think it's going to happen, but I would just love for Brent Spiner to come back as Lore, and that be like the last episode. The big reveal is like Lore's behind it all. You know what I mean? Like he's the one that's manipulating all the pieces, and he's gone back, he's gone back to this plan, I think that would be cool.
Well, and it's interesting because if a lot of what you theorize in terms of the idea of, slavery and stuff, like if the rogues are in a sense kind of like freedom fighters, by the time that we would get potentially to that moment with Lore, Lore's a freedom fighter now. He's acting as a terrorist. Yes. He's continuing on the same trajectory he was on, going back to this episode. But at the same point, we're gonna pop, if this was to happen, Lore is cast in a slightly different light. He may not be using the right way to go about it, but at the same point, he's a freedom fighter now.
That would be a really interesting twist. So that especially Lore becomes like an anti-hero. You know what I mean? He's not like a full-on villain anymore. He kind of that kind of reminds me of Magneto, in X-Men, that kind of role where he's like, yeah, he's a bad guy. I mean, there's no doubt he's a villain. He's a bad guy, but you kind of feel for him. I mean, you can kind of feel, Magneto's position, right, in X-Men.
Yeah.
And if Lore became something like that, that would be really cool. I mean, that's I don't think that's going to happen, but I think that would be really cool. That would be really neat to kind of make him sort of more of like an anti-hero, where he's actually trying to kind of help the situation, maybe on both sides, because the Borg are being exploited and his kind are being exploited. You know what I mean? And he's trying to do something about it because he's not into it, So that would be really interesting.
I don't think he's going to do that just because of the character. He's the definition of evil. So if he did help him, it would be to advance his own agenda, not because he actually wants to help him.
I know, but he could still come across as more of a, that could be the way he presents his argument. It just casts him in a slightly different light. It doesn't really change who he is, But,
right. But if he presented that argument, it would be to manipulate the others to do what he wanted them to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I could see that. I could totally see that. Yeah, I agree with you there. But I think it would be a neat thing to play with. Like I said, I don't think it's going to happen. I just would love it if they had lore, and because really, again, it does feel like this idea of lores is going to be explored extensively in Picard, of the fusion of the android and the Borg.
I'm not allowed to say Section 31's staring at me. It's even creepier when they send their like alien people in here. I mean, it's not even a human, and he's this guy has 8 eyes. It's really creeping me out.
And he's got all of them on you, Heather. He's got all of them on you.
Yep.
All right, Dave. So you had Picard. So what have we got for the man himself, the legend? Because we are talking about Star Trek Picard. What do we need to see before we watch the first episode of Picard, which is only a few hours away, right? It's midnight Pacific time. So we're like hours away from the premiere of Picard.
So it's a weird thing because ironically enough, I get to talk about the title character of the show. We have Sir Patrick Stewart coming back to this classic character, signature performance of his. But at the same point too, when you're going through and you're picking out the episodes for Jean-Luc Picard, leading up to Picard, it's kind of anticlimactic because there's certain beats you just have to do. So you can't go to things like Inner Light. You know what I mean? Like there's all these great Picard episodes, but there's some of them you just can't go to because they're probably not relevant. They say a lot about who the character is, but they're not terribly relevant. Before I go too much further into this, it looks like we've got another comment here commenting back about lore.
Okay, so again, Ballerina Casey says, regarding lore, it makes you think where Beverly, as the Enterprise doctor, would be in this. A lot of people are wondering if Gates McFadden is going to be in Picard. I personally am hoping and thinking that we're going to get at least one more legacy character as a surprise that that hasn't been leaked, that they haven't promoted. That I have no inside knowledge. I'm just kind of hoping. Now, Beverly would make a great, she makes total sense to be in Picard because of their special relationship, But what her role would be, I don't know. I don't know if first of all, I don't know if she's going to be in it. But I don't know exactly if she is in it. I don't know what her role exactly would be. Like, would they sort of maybe just explore more of that special relationship between Picard and Beverly? Or would she be more involved with, maybe with this process or whatever, where she's trying to, reverse it for some reason, or, she's, I don't know. It's interesting to speculate on, but we don't know. As far as we know right now, she's not going to be, at least in the first season.
I could tell you for the first 3 episodes, because at least I know that much. But she is not in the first 3 episodes.
So we'll have to see. I mean, she's one that I think a lot of fans want to see in Picard, and it makes a lot of sense, again, because of the special relationship between Beverly and Picard. If you guys remember All Good Things, it was actually, they actually said that they were married, then they were divorced. You know what I mean? At this point in time. We don't know if that's the case in this timeline or not.
I actually had a theory that, and this is completely wrong. This is not it, but this was my theory. So of course it's wrong. what I wanted was Picard and her to have had a kid, and that kid be, the important person that we see on the trailer. But unfortunately, that is wrong. And I tried, but Nathan tells me that I am totally and completely and 100% wrong. So.
Oh, because there was a lot of people speculating on that. That's Picard's daughter. So
I wanted it.
That's interesting. So that was a little bit of a spoiler there, but hopefully not too bad of one. So
not too bad. She's not in the first 3 episodes, and she's not involved in a way like how we would like her to be involved.
But that doesn't preclude the possibility that Picard and Beverly did have a child. We just don't see them. You know what I mean? Maybe that child is with Beverly, right?
That's a good point. Maybe Wesley has a half sister.
Well, some people, there's a big fan theory that Picard is actually Wesley's dad. You've heard that one?
Yeah. Now, did you know that Will Wheaton is going to be talking about Picard?
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, I actually, yes, I am aware of that. He's going to be doing a podcast on Facebook, right? He's going to be doing like an after Picard.
I know I'm going to be listening because I want to hear what he has to say about it.
But it's on Facebook, right?
I don't remember. I'm going to have to look it up.
So that's what I remember seeing, was that he's doing some sort of like Facebook has been kind of doing like their Facebook TV thing. So I think it's kind of tied into that.
Okay.
But that was my understanding. And yeah, so he's going to be doing breakdowns of the episodes, as they air, similar to what Dave and I will be doing every Wednesday for the next 10 weeks.
We'll be on Sundays.
So, well, here's the interest. Well, getting back to that, because it's interesting because, Next Gen had such a great send off, with All Good Things. It was a great ending. And part of the reason we're getting Picard is because Nemesis didn't feel like a great way to send Next Gen off. It's not the way people want to kind of remember it. Well, anyhow, getting back to this, because
Hey, Dave, I think we lost the stream for a second, so you're whatever you said may not have gotten out.
Okay, so all I was trying to state is that getting back to the idea of Beverly, it's interesting because All Good Things was that great ending send-off for Next Gen. I know that among the people I talk to that like Star Trek Next Generation, no one has any disparaging comments about All Good Things. I quite love All Good Things. I think it's a great ending, right? And then I know part of the reason that we're getting Picard is because there's a feeling that Nemesis wasn't a great way to leave the Next Gen crew, right? And I feel that way.
I think
too.
Patrick Stewart has actually said that. I think he's actually said that. Yeah.
So anyhow, it's interesting because of the timeline shift. Beverly had such an important role in All Good Things, and then here in this timeline, it looks like if we see her, it'll be much later than we're expecting, or we would like. So that's all my Beverly reaction, thinking about it, is that the important role that she plays, as the captain of the Pasteur and what's going on, versus the fact that as far as it looks like, we know that she's definitely not in the first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So yeah. So back to Picard here. So like I said, it's a mixed bag when you get Picard, because there's certain things you have to do that are terribly relevant. And then there's you. So I got one pick. I got one genuine pick. So this was my one genuine pick. This is, of course, Star Trek Next Generation. This is the episode Family. It aired on October 1st, 1990. This, of course, followed The Best of Both Worlds Part 2. And this is Season 4, Episode 2. And I love this episode for a lot of different reasons. But we learn a lot about Picard's family.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of his upbringing. This is the first time we get the introduction of that his family has a history where they've been keeping, the art of wine making alive, and how much
Picard.
Yeah, and how much tradition is important, for his family in general, specifically his brother. And it gives us a lot of insight into his family life, but more importantly, too, we see the toll that Picard being turned into a Borg and becoming Locutus and Best of Both Worlds Part 1. We see the toll that, the battle at Wolf 359 and everything has taken on him. And how, fight as much as he could, he was fighting, something that at the end eventually beat him almost, And we also see, too, the importance that Data is one of those pivotal characters. They come back for him. And David is pivotal in bringing him back from staying aboard. If it hadn't been for Data, Picard may not have come back at all.
You could argue that not only that Earth would have been assimilated. So
yeah. So
because there was nobody left. There was nobody left. So
right. So that's the reason I picked this episode. I felt like it's very, very important for Picard's journey and his story, and also too that it's the begin. We know that Data and Picard share a special connection, but this just reinforces that even further, and builds upon that friendship and that bond that we see like in Measure of a Man. You know what I mean? It just builds upon it. And so that's why I picked this particular. This is the one episode that I genuinely picked. This episode, I stayed away from, kind of the more obvious Borg choices, at least in the beginning, because I felt like everyone else is talking about that, and I feel like his family is terribly, terribly relevant. I think for what we're going to see in Picard.
Oh, I agree. Obviously, we're going to start at Chateau Picard, right? So he's going back. Clearly, Picard. We have that precedent, right? That Picard goes back home to heal, right? And we know that there's something that happened to get Picard out of Starfleet. That something bad happened. That he didn't leave on good terms, and so it makes sense. He goes back to the Chateau Picard to heal, like he did in this episode. The big difference, though, is his big brother's not there to help him anymore. So right. I'm kind of wondering how that's going to factor. And I always was kind of a little upset that they killed off his family in Generations, because I felt that there was a lot more that could have been done with the Picard family and also with his nephew. I would like to have seen his nephew in Picard, but he's dead. It would have been nice if he was, we could have Picard and his nephew running around. You know what I mean? And also you can kind of pass the torch real easy that way, because now you have a new character that's not so new. You know what I mean? Because we've seen him before, and he has the Picard name. You know what I mean? That would have been cool. I've always kind of lamented that Generations they killed off Picard's family,
and I always thought that was weird.
Yeah,
I never understood why they did that. So,
and I'd like to give another minor spoiler. You do find out what happened between Picard and Starfleet in the first episode.
That's good. Yeah, we definitely need to get that out of the way. Like, I think right away. You know what I mean? That's something that I definitely want to know right off the bat.
And there's cursing.
There's cursing.
There's cursing. Someone actually tells Picard to F off.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Wow, that's crazy. That is just crazy to me. And I heard your podcast, so I was aware of that as well. But man, that to me is just crazy. It's just crazy. But we'll see the context, right, in the show. Yes. So
yeah.
So we're going to segue into my next choice. I was looking for something that if you're trying to cram and get as much information in as you could. And I also looked at these last two choices. I was looking for things where you wouldn't have to have CBS All Access or Netflix, or like an easier way for people to just kind of easily see these. So my next two choices, I have wonderful news. You can watch them both on Crackle. For some strange reason, you can't see these next two choices on CBS All Access. But
really?
You can see them on Crackle for free. Why is that?
That's kind of cool, though. That's kind of cool because Crackle is free, so that's kind of neat in a way.
And to even further emphasize the strangeness of this, at the time that I checked, you couldn't even rent these things on Amazon and watch them. So Crackle, that's where you got to go. Now, this may have changed because, like I said, they turned Justified off of Amazon with no fanfare real quick. But at the time that I reviewed these, the only places you could actually watch these next two choices, unless you own it on Blu-ray or DVD, or you previously bought it as a digital download, and you could probably still buy it as a digital download, is actually on Crackle. So this next choice, this is obviously Star Trek First Contact. This is one of the better of the next-gen movies, in my personal opinion. But this fills in a lot of information, and I feel like it compacts a lot of the stuff with the Borg. And in a weird way, actually, having rewatched Best of Both Worlds 1 and 2, rewatched them. Part of the reason I picked this one is because I feel like this focuses more on Picard than Best of Both Worlds, especially Part 1 does. Because Part 1 really focuses a lot more on Riker and the rivalry he has with Commander Shelby. And I was like, well, as a Picard choice, I don't know. A lot of people are going to pick this one because you see him turned into a Borg. But I feel like you get a lot of the same information in terms of the struggle and his feelings about having been turned into a Borg. Again, I feel like you get a lot of that in First Contact. Plus, it's a fun movie. It's got a lot of action. You also get a lot more of the hierarchy of the Borg, the introduction of the Borg Queen. I just felt like that this is a good choice, especially if you're cramming for Picard. You could watch this one and it'll catch up pretty quick. So
yeah, I think this is one of the tops on every list that I've seen, because I've seen a lot of top 10 lists of what you need to see, before you watch Picard. I think this is on the top of many of those lists.
Wait. Can you do that hand movement again?
This one?
No, and then down. Yeah,
Down.
I love that. Okay, go ahead. Sorry. Oh my God, guys. Okay, get this. No, I'm sorry.
So no, but I felt like that this catches you up on the Borg, what they're trying to do. I feel like it focuses more on Picard than Best of Both Worlds does, at least the first episode for sure. And it just, and you again, one of the things I like about this too is you get to sense Picard's emotional state and how he really felt about it. That monologue with the one character is, well, I guess Captain Ahab has to go, catch his whale, and Picard rails against that, and then eventually sees the reason in it. You see him emotional. He's like, this is the line here, no farther. And he's very emotional and very intense. But at the same point too, you see logic and reason winning out, and him realizing what the better choice, the better decision is. That's one of the things that made him a great captain. That's one of the things I hope that we don't lose in this show. That's one of my fears. No, I felt
but you like also see him lose it a little bit too. Remember, you see him, exactly. Like, he actually calls Worf a coward, because he basically Picard is like sending all of his crew to their deaths because he's like, we're not letting the Borg take this ship, even though they're taking the ship. He actually calls Worf a coward at one point. He really becomes like unhinged, in a lot of this movie.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important because when you look at family and you look at this, you see a broad swath of emotion of Picard, and you get a good sense that he's a very complex character. He's not the one-dimensional captain that sometimes he's portrayed as, and he doesn't always make the logical decision. And I felt like that was important. So in Family and First Contact, we see a lot of his struggles with the Borg, and we get a sense of how he felt about being turned into essentially a weapon. Yeah, and a weapon of mass destruction, no less. So I felt like that's why I picked these two. But I feel like this one's definitely required. Then we'll segue on to my third choice, the one I wished I didn't have to pick. But you really got to kind of watch this one because it's so incredibly relevant. You can't get away from it. I have a lot of issues with this movie. I don't hate this movie. This is not Star Trek V: The Final Frontier by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of things I like about this film. I quite like Tom Hardy as an actor. I enjoyed his kind of banter back and forth with Patrick Stewart. And there's a lot of things about this I like. I love the opening scene where it's the reception after the wedding, and one of the things I like about Nemesis, and one of the things I think makes this a great choice, is you get a very good sense of family, and how much Picard loves his command crew, and how connected and important they are. And again, it reinforces that connection with Data.
Yeah,
and we get to see the scene with the Argo is kind of fun because we see a different aspect of Picard. He's enjoying what he's doing, and he loves being out and having an adventure, and he is adventurous, and that's sometimes an aspect that we don't always see with Picard in Next Gen. So I felt like that this is a great choice for a lot of those reasons. The obvious story beat was the fact that, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen Nemesis, turn this off, go to Crackle, watch First Contact and Nemesis right now, because it will catch you up for Picard. But spoiler alert for those people who haven't seen Nemesis, but obviously Data dies. And obviously that's going to have a huge impact and a huge significance. That's one of the reasons I feel like that this film is a bit of a bummer to leave Next Gen, because you even see, like, one of the last scenes you see is Picard, and you just see the weight of the fact that Data's gone. And you sense that in him. And that's where it ends. And they start up the swell of the Star Trek Next Gen fanfare, which of course comes from the motion picture. I'm not going to stop pointing that out. But they start that swell of the theme, and they're trying to leave you on a happy note. But there is no Search for Data movie that comes after this. There is no Voyage Home. It's just left there. And that's a dark place to leave Next Gen. And I think that's part of the reason this film, I know among my friends, a lot of my friends, not all of them, but among a lot of my friends, they don't care for Nemesis, because it's sort of like, it doesn't even have an uplifting moment where at the end of Wrath of Khan they say, he's really not dead as long as you remember. It doesn't even have that moment. It's just kind of Picard, just sort of like, this sucks. I thought
that's what B4 was supposed to be. That hopeful,
Yeah. They had the thing with B4 where he's singing, right? And he's singing the tune that
right.
Data was singing before, and they show that kind of connection.
Yeah, and he supposedly has all of his memories and all of his knowledge and everything.
Right. But and here's the thing. One of the things I love about the Countdown comic that actually led into the first J.J. Abrams film, that was actually called Countdown. That has not escaped either Eric or my notice, that both of these comic book lead-ins lead into the first of I think it was a 2009 Star Trek movie. It's a comic book tie-in. It's called Countdown. And then we got one leading into Picard. But it's rather, one of the things that I loved about that was the fact that we see Data as a captain. He's the new captain of the Enterprise. And it is B4 with Data's memories to the forefront. So essentially Data is back. I love that idea. So one of the things that I'm not too terribly thrilled is I hate the idea that Data is really dead. And if you watch Nemesis, they do have the scene with B4, but kind of the last thing you see is Picard not too terribly thrilled.
That's why they stuck him in a drawer.
Yeah.
That's what you do with stuff you don't want to deal with anymore. You stick it in a drawer.
Yeah.
It is interesting. You touched on the two countdowns, because Heather, we've actually been reviewing the new Picard Countdown comic book. Are you familiar with it?
I've heard about it, but I haven't read it.
So there's been 2 issues that have come out. We've actually reviewed it on this show. It's a pretty interesting premise. There's some weird things going on in there. It's a prequel to Picard, but it's very obvious because they use the same name as the previous Countdown comic book, which was supposed to bridge Kelvin and Next Gen. That was basically what the purpose of the original Countdown comic was to connect Next Gen to Kelvin, to show us exactly where the new universe is created, and what the status of the Prime universe was up to that point. Which we're still going with that. We're still going, obviously, with Picard. We still have the destruction of Romulus.
Right. So Picard is in the Prime timeline.
But this new Countdown comic book is clearly meant to subvert the previous Countdown comic book. It's even the same name. It's a totally different story. Data's not in it. You know what I mean? It's like it's obviously meant to replace the previous Countdown comic book.
So are you saying there were 2 Countdown comic books? One was in the Prime universe or timeline, and one was in the other timeline, the Kelvin timeline?
Well, technically, I guess they would both be considered in the Prime timeline.
Yeah, technically.
But the previous one was a bridge. It was meant to show you what the next gen people were doing when Spock was trying to rescue Romulus.
Okay.
It showed you what they were doing.
And it showed the role that they actually played, because they were actually part of the group that was kind of helping Spock. In a sense, if you look at it and you look at Picard, the Admiral Picard, concept or idea that we're getting, the Enterprise would be part of the rescue fleet, and Data would be the captain of the Enterprise. That when we saw the very first trailer, we first talked about it, Eric, you remember, that's one of the things I was hoping that we would get to see, is even if it was a brief cameo, use the de-aging technology, let's see Data as the new captain of the Enterprise, and then, Picard can go off on his pirate ship with his crew and do whatever they got to do, But we know for a fact that Data is gone. So it literally contradicts the Countdown comic book that led into the Kelvin timeline. So obviously the Kelvin timeline affected this, and this isn't necessarily the Prime timeline anymore. This is an offshoot possibly of the Kelvin timeline, especially if it ties into Discovery. So I
will say I am interested also, though, with Nemesis and specifically B4. Why did they disassemble him and put him in the drawer? They
were sick of him. He wouldn't work the way he was supposed to. I mean, the batteries, it just wouldn't charge the way it used to.
He's defective.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, it's kind of sad, because it's kind of like, well, B4 wasn't the replacement for Data, so let's stick him in a drawer.
So does that mean every time whoever's listening to this, whenever they open the drawer, they're going to be sad because they're going to think of Data?
Yeah, I can see that, right? It's going to bring back bad memories. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No blue skies do I see. But no, I mean, I'm rewatching Nemesis because I haven't seen it for quite some time. I was just kind of shocked, and that's all I could think of. And all I could think of is like, where is the Search for Data movie? Like where is it? Like, where is the Voyage Home? Because, if they could have left Star Trek where they left it at Wrath of Khan. They could have left it. Some people would say, by how they keep trying to remake Wrath of Khan, that they never stopped leaving it there. But it's just one of those things that I was kind of stunned by. It's like, we never really kind of rescued Data. He really did die, and that's a very, very dark place. So they have a very interesting jumping off point for Picard, because Picard has referenced Logan and talks about how Logan was kind of a great send off for Wolverine, and kind of how it subverted your expectations of what you thought would happen in the X-Men universe, but it's still a great film. So it gives them a very interesting place to start, because in Logan, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen Logan, which I don't know why you haven't watched it, Eric, but anyhow, spoiler alert for Logan. But, we find out all these horrible things that happen to the X-Men, and why we find Professor X and Logan / Wolverine and Caliban in the place that they're in. So Star Trek, if you want to start it off on a downbeat and kind of tell a Logan-esque story within Star Trek, they've got a huge, great downer beat to start on, because Data is, in fact, actually dead.
Well, they have, Patrick Stewart has said that one of the reasons that he decided to come back, one of the reasons we're getting Picard, is because he felt that he wanted to kind of, he didn't want to leave on Nemesis. That's so in a very real way, Nemesis really is the reason for Star Trek Picard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he kind of agrees with you that basically he's like, I kind of didn't want to leave on that note. So he said that was one of the things that made it appealing for him to come back to the role, because Yeah, if Nemesis was sort of better, then maybe there would be no Star Trek Picard. See what I'm saying? If Patrick Stewart really felt the closure and really felt that it was done right, he wouldn't be doing Picard.
That's pretty hard though. I mean, nowadays I think I'm pretty spoiled because a 1 hour episode is normal. Whereas you look at a movie, it's just 2 hours. That's like no time at all. So how can you get a whole full story, beginning, middle, and plus closure of an entire series? It's just very difficult to do.
Yeah,
it is.
It is. And it was just such a weird choice to. I mean, I get financially if the film didn't do well, they just left it, you know. But at the same point too, it is a weird place to leave Next Gen, you know, where this film kind of leaves off. You know, it's but literally seriously, I can't stop thinking about that. It's like, you know, where's my Search for Data movie?
Well, there's a lot of fans that hate Nemesis, and they hate Nemesis specifically because they kill Data. And they can't process that. I mean, it's like traumatic for some fans. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, Data was their favorite character on Next Gen. It wasn't Picard. I've talked to lots of fans that Data is their favorite Next Gen character and their favorite Star Trek character. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think it was really, really tough for a lot of them. You know, that it's a lot of fans that never got over it. Like I said, a lot of fans hate this movie. I mean, they absolutely hate it. I'm not one of them, by the way. I actually enjoy it a lot more than other people. I think it's way better than Insurrection, in my personal opinion. But yeah, a lot of people hate this movie. I mean, they absolutely hate it.
Yeah, and I you know, it's for me. I mean, I don't hate the film. You know, like I said, it's one of the, in my mind, it's not the bottom of the barrel of Star Trek films. It's just this film has some questionable choices in it. You know, we were texting back and forth, Eric, and I was bringing up I don't like the whole thing with Troy. You know, I don't understand why you have to do that. And I thought it was really weird that we leave off on the Next Gen movie with essentially a weird, for lack of a better term to describe it, psychic rape scene. And then Star Trek 6 has a weird psychic rape scene. You know, why? You know, 'cause sometimes, you know, you've got that winning.
That's true. That's true.
You get that winning formula, and you got to put all the pieces in there because that's the magic sauce that makes the hamburger great, you know. But at the same point too, it's like that's not part of the winning formula. That's just a weird choice that they made for Star Trek 6. You don't have to put that in the last of Next Gen movies just because they did it in Star Trek. Well, the last one had it. Let's put that in there. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it's
it is
just
a controversial scene. I've heard Marina Sirtis say that she hated that. So yeah.
And that's a horrible place to leave her character off too. I mean, I know she gets revenge.
Well, she does get back though. I mean, she's instrumental in actually, you know, actually locating the ship, you know, because it's cloaked and everything. So
that's why you don't piss off a Betazoid. Not get to piss off a Betazoid.
I mean, she gets a little. She gets back at him. You know.
I know, but it leaves Riker, and because we start off with the wedding reception. And then when we leave this movie, I mean, I know that Troy is recovered and she'll be better and her and Riker will be okay, but that leaves their relationship in a weird place. You know, that's what I'm talking about. It's just this film, while it's necessary and it's important, and you can watch it for free on Crackle, it's just a weird place to leave Next Gen. It just really is. And rewatching it was even more kind of stunning because at the same time that Nemesis was in theaters, we had other Star Trek on TV. So, you know, you could go experience more Star Trek. You weren't limited just to Nemesis. But it was just kind of weird. It was just kind of weird. I remember I didn't like it in the movie theater, and I'd seen it one other time before with someone, and then I watched it again. So I've only seen this movie about 3 times, which is rare for me because normally I watch everything like 50 or 60 times. But it was just rewatching it. I found myself having the same thoughts. It's just such a weird place to leave the Next Gen characters in a sense. It's just a weird, I don't know. It's just a downer. It's just a downer.
Yeah, well, again, I think Patrick Stewart agrees with you, and that is why we're getting Star Trek Picard. The big reason why we're getting Star Trek Picard.
Cool. So that's it for my my whole Picard thing. Unless anyone else has anything they would like to add. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think we're good, right?
Okay,
Yep.
Cool. Awesome. So are we good to probably go to the sign off?
Yes, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Okay, I want to thank you for hopefully watching or listening to this episode, the Rogues, Retro Rogues Live. I almost went back to the old title because I'm getting old and I forgot what I was trying to say. And it's weird seeing myself. It's weird. I'm going to get used to it eventually, everyone, but it's weird. But I want to thank you for watching this episode. Again, my name is Dave Beatty. I've been one of your hosts. I didn't mention at the beginning of this, but I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer for nearly 30 years. If you're curious to see some of my work and learn more about me, you can see that on my website. That's at davebeatty.com. That's www.davebeaty.com. And I want to thank Eric Alexander for once again being, in my personal opinion, one of the best co-hosts in the galaxy. Please, Eric, tell people where they can learn more about you on the interwebs.
Well, I am most active on Twitter, and you can find me there at BaseGod14. I have that on the bottom of my screen there. BASSGOD14. And yes, that's BaseGod, not BassGod. BaseGod14. And also, that's where my YouTube is as well, depending on where you're watching this, because we multi-stream. I don't know if people are watching this on Twitter or if they're watching it on Twitch or YouTube, but my YouTube is also BaseGod14. And Heather, where can people find you?
So if you go to starfleetunderground.com, that's our website. You could find our SoundCloud link there. You could find our Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of that there. So the website is probably the best way to get a hold of all of that. Or you could email us at thecollective@starfleetunderground.com. And that's pretty much where you could find us for Star Trek.
And I am going to be on the Underground podcast in an upcoming episode, right? So
yes, we are looking forward to
that.
Yep. So our episode will be coming out this Sunday, and me and you, we're going to be doing the recording on Saturday. So that's going to be fun. Thank you for being on the show.
Well, thank you for being on our show, Heather. You were awesome, and you gave some great insight. You brought great picks, I think, for 7. I know a lot of people are very excited about 7. Ballerina KC, she's active on a hashtag that I use a lot called All Star Trek, and she's a huge 7 of 9 fan. So I'd be curious what her thoughts were on your picks, but I thought your picks were very good. So.
Thank you, and I wish I could have given out more spoilers, but unfortunately, Section 31, dude, they're scary. So
I know they're after you because I heard the podcast. I know they're definitely after you.
Yeah, they heard me talking. Now I can't get away from them. Always looking behind my shoulder.
Right on.
Well, very cool. Thanks again, Heather, for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And again, we want to thank all of you who are hopefully watching or listening at home. And hope you'll join us again next Wednesday, 7 p.m., Lord willing. And I'm going to talk to Eric about maybe we're going to have a contest. And maybe we'll give away some art on the next episode. Cartoons Magazine, who I used to do artwork for, sent me, strangely enough, a copy of the sketch cover, which means you can draw on it. So maybe I'll draw something up and we'll give it away on the next episode. So definitely tune in, come back to the episode, watch it. I think we'll have the contest be like if you make a comment, you're entered in, to the contest. But we'll do that in the next episode. So hopefully everyone will come back for that. It'll be a lot of fun.
Cool.
Awesome. All right.